I'm Emily. I'm born and raised in Lexington, Kentucky. I went to high school here. And then actually, once I graduated high school, I went to a small university in Cincinnati and played college softball for 1 year. And I think that was kind of when I found my love for exercise sports science and just the weight room in itself. And so, because of that, I moved back home and then went to Eastern Kentucky University and just had an awesome group of just community, especially professors there. And that's where I just got to dive deep into my major, which is exercise and sports science with a concentration of fitness and wellness management. A mouthful, but I'm still proud of it because, that's kind of where the love of just training and nutrition started for me. And so from there on out, then just I've kind of just went the personal trainer route as well as a health coach and a softball coach at the high school that I was attending back in the day. And now it kind of brings us to here.
As the one who creates the rules in a way or gets to enforce the rules, it's such a weird kind of perspective. How did that kind of hit you when you first got into that role?
I have the middle school girls, and so that can kind of be another brand new world. And you can kind of also say that, in high school, whatever happens to you, that is your whole world. Whether you're like when your crush finds out that you like them, that's like the world ends, or you're great on a test, whatever. But I feel like that's enhanced when you're in middle school. And at least like from my perspective, like being an adult now and then having leadership over these young girls, it's like I thought I could I guess, understand where they're coming from because I went through that too. But you just forget how much that you grow and just develop as a person and just in wisdom in general. It's really hard to kind of take a few steps back and meet them where they're at and say, okay, listen, I don't understand and be honest and admit that. But then being able to, I guess, lead them out of their own head and have them think for themselves. And so to kind of create those, I guess, quote unquote rules, but I think it's more so creating a culture within the young girls. So it's like different than school, if that makes sense. So creating a safe space on the field, but also just during practice where they can actually like take a breath and be like, oh, okay, let me leave that behind because now I'm in a space where I can have fun, I can be honest, but also, dive deep into a passion.
Yeah. And I think, as a coach, it's such a weird kind of dichotomy of like the two things right there because you want the activity, of course, to be enjoyable because that's what I think whenever you enjoy what you're doing, you work harder at it. But you also, you have to have those kind of boundaries of this is what we're doing. It's not necessarily it's not necessarily always a democracy. You just got to sometimes do what you're told. And that's not always the most fun thing to do. But how did you kind of find that? And how do you, create that, I guess, balance between the two things?
Definitely. It's definitely like equal tensions between, like you said, having fun, but also let's build character and let's get to work kind of mentality. And I actually started coaching when I was around 19 or 20. I'm 24 right now. And so at the beginning, it was hard because, I had assistant coaches who were dads. And it was like I lacked confidence because I'm like, how are these people going to take me seriously? Because of my heart was to truly just make a winning team and to make athletes. So yeah, I think to find that you just gain respect by your actions. Like what I tell them to do, it's never something that I haven't done before. So whether it's a drill on the field or in the cage when they're just doing BP, or even like my catchers and pitchers, like whenever I give them a rule to follow or even a command, so to speak, it's nothing that I haven't gone through before. And so I kind of use that, use my history to try to relate to them, but also coach them.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break here just for a second. Let me tell you about Smoking Gun Coffee. They're a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to produce a quality coffee at an affordable price. They only buy coffee from small coffee farmers around the world with a cup score of at least 85. Each batch is roasted to order for maximum freshness. They also donate a large portion of their proceeds to organizations that help local communities, veterans, first responders, or you can donate to the foundation of your choice at the checkout by going to www.smokingguncoffee.com. That's SMOKIN Gun Coffee.
And how do you step into that role as a coach? How did you step into kind of being your own coach, if you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, like, by stereotype, do you kind of mean just like the big guy who's mean and just says do this and I'll just sit back and watch, maybe?
Yeah.
Definitely. I think me being a female has probably helped a bit just because it's softball and I have middle school girls. And so I'm kind of thankful, I guess, for that aspect, that I think there's an increased level of trust just because they see me as a female and a former softball player. And I think that was a catalyst of where I could, I would say, maybe open up to then creating my own way of coaching. And I think, we're always going to evolve as coaches. I think having assistant coaches around me, I'm telling you, I don't know how it happened, but what I flaw, they definitely are just there to bridge the gaps. And I think as a coach, you have to have that because A, it's not all about you, but also B, you cannot create a team with just one person, if that makes sense. So I think honestly, just having, mentors around me and kind of filter through what they've taught me and me kind of doing trial and error, I think that's where it naturally becomes your own coaching method.
Yeah. And how do you feel like kind of having that coaching experience has kind of played a role in other areas, personal training and health coach? How do you think that, those have all kind of culminated?
Yes, they're all very different. Being a health coach and a softball coach, you would think, oh, you just kind of pick and choose what you or like how you want to coach. But it's so different because the topic and the specificity is super different. So it's been kind of crazy this past season for me because I would wake up and be a trainer and a health coach in the morning all day for 7 to 8 hours. But then that same night, we would have a game or I would put on the coaching hat and then have to kind of shift my thoughts a bit. So I think coaching softball has helped to, I think, patience the most, but also maybe empathy as well. Being an athlete and growing up, your first thought is always being competitive and wanting to win. And in the softball world, it makes sense. But once you go to the health coach and personal training world, it's, you're not dealing with athletes really. Some are, of course, and some have had an athletic past. But I think just kind of pumping the brakes and just saying, okay, let me meet them where they're at. Because if you don't do that, then you're kind of stuck.
In so many ways, like being a personal trainer, it's like teaching someone how to battle themselves, I think.
Yes, that's so good. I'm glad you mentioned that because that makes total sense to me. Also, and I kind of viewed that with the weight room itself, like leaving the field and then realizing, oh, like where do I compete? But that was when you go into the weight room, and that's when, whether it's weightlifting, bodybuilding, powerlifting, or just you working out every day, that's the new game. And that's the, new level of competition.
When you're younger, it definitely occurs more, but as you continue to get older, you have less new experiences in life. You kind of have this same routine. You don't have as many new experiences. You're probably around the same people more. You're not meeting different people. But when you get to go to the gym, you kind of get to have that new experience every single day of just a little bit more weight or another rep or honestly feeling better doing the same stuff. Like even that's a new experience. Like the gym can be this crazy realm of just constant new experiences.
It can. That's so good. Every day is different. And even like the people around the gym, I think that can help too. Like for me, being on a team for so long, after I got out of that space, it was so hard to go through an entire workout like for the first year. It was just so weird. Like, and it's so embarrassing to say because it was like the weight room was where I thrived and it was like the best part of my day. And today, and to this day still is. But when I left softball, it was so hard because I was like, wow, I'm by myself now. And that's when you have to create, okay, well, why am I doing this? And how am I going to get there?
And I think that's an important and a very interesting topic to talk about is that why. How do you help people find that?
That's a good question. I think that comes differently with everybody. I think the way that I found my why, it doesn't really work for all my clients or even my little middle school girls. I just think you just have to find like what drives you, but also I think there's a passion hidden behind that, if that makes sense. So I think just taking the time to be patient and walking with somebody, I think that's important besides kind of just standing there and having them lower and say, okay, do XYZ and hands off. I think taking that extra time at the very beginning of the journey to build that trust and say, okay, let's walk through something that you've probably been walking through by yourself for a long time. And that's where we come in, because you have to adore people to be any type of coach, in my opinion. And so taking that extra time to walk with them and say, okay, listen, why are you here? And asking the hard questions. And it might take them, a client and even ourselves a longer time to, I guess, express the reasons and the yes and the no's and walking through that. So it's kind of like a mini healing experience when you first jump into either a new training cycle or just a new training and fitness journey.
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
What do you think is kind of one of those really big things you learned about yourself when you initially started coaching?
Coaching for softball, I would probably say, I kind of identified my weaknesses at first. I was young, so I could probably assume that when I first started, I was like, oh, I got this, I don't need to ask for help. But especially the last 2 years was when, at least for me, I learned that it was hard for me to ask for help from people. And I guess I got humbled in that area. And now I just like I'm able to ask help anytime I need it, because I know that the people and the community that I've built myself around will be always willing to help. As far as personal training and health coaching goes, my first thought that comes to mind is just the exercise science part. I think science is always developing. It's always going quicker. And I bet everyone on your podcast has said that, you can't just stay in one place and just do the same coaching over and over again. Yes, I think there's a time and place for that always, but you still have to learn. And I think mentorship is the best way to do that. Find people that do something different than you, get out of your comfort zone. I was able to intern kind of throughout my whole crazy season of coaching softball and being a health coach, a personal trainer. I found strength coaches that deal with collegiate athletes, and just to see how their training style is evolving and developing. But they were so gracious enough to teach me and to kind of help me, find my own way of training myself, but also my clients the best way possible.
How do you feel like fitness now, in this present moment, in the last couple of years and now, has played a role in on the youth? Because as a kid, like, I never thought about fitness. It was never, social media really was never a big thing anyway, but like fitness to me, it was just like going outside and being physically active and that kind of thing. Now it seems like you have more and more youth, kids really 13, 14, 15, becoming almost like in some ways fitness influencers.
I think at least right now for the fitness world of social media, you first see something, and I think you see a person looking a certain way, and then you want to emulate that, or you see somebody lifting heavy and then you want to emulate that, and so on and so on. So I think, back in the day, or however far back you want to go, You could say, you know, fitness, just like you said, it's just about moving, going outside in the sun during the summer, especially, and having a good time. But now I think it's kind of like our eyes. It's what we see, what we're attracted to or drawn to. Whether it's, you know, I'm drawn to someone who already has a big platform or me wanting to like copy that, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I think just the biggest change is what all we're exposed to.
A big part of coaching, whether it be softball, sports coaching, personal training, helping other people, one-on-one, a big part of that is psychology. The psychological side, the mind plays such a big role in getting people to do things and, trusting you. How have you kind of evolved your methods or just really the way that you go about doing things? How do you feel like you've evolved to kind of play more towards the psychological side of people and not just kind of throwing facts at them necessarily?
I think that is one area that, wasn't really taught a whole lot to me, especially in like textbook form. And I think, we all could have had more of that, but I think experience also comes as well. And I would kind of say I'm still kind of in that boat, battling that a little bit with myself, sure, but also, finding different ways to coach everybody because everyone's different. I'm reading a book right now. I think it's from, I believe his name is Coach Brett Bartholomew, if I'm saying that correctly. And I believe it's called like The Mind of Coaching or just like coaching others in general. And he's really kind of expressed and just like broken it down because he's been successful just in, the normal clientele, but also athletes as well. But yeah, I just think for me, I'm just reading some books right now and I'm trying to learn. And of course, having my experience just with different clients and also different ages has also kind of became a catalyst for my career and coaching methods as well. I know that me and you both have seen adults probably struggle with the same battle that they did when they were 12, 13 years old. And it's like, we can't live like that. So having, coaches, and hopefully I can be one for one of the girls one day, is helping them overcome like their mental blocks or just challenges right then when they're 10, 11, 12, or even older. And I think that's the biggest part of psychology is, just finding ways to overcome.
How do you go about helping someone, set a good goal, create a plan, and then achieve that goal?
Right. That's really good. I think, yeah, kind of what I said earlier, kind of taking that extra time to sit down with them and do try to get inside their head and figure out what motivates them. A lot of times, when I have clients that are parents, it's more than likely always their kid or their grandchild, and they want to, be fit for them and be fit for life, and just kind of show them that they are doing something different, going against the grain and achieving a goal. So yeah, I think just kind of whenever they give me a goal, I try to push that a little further and say, okay, yes, it's a great goal, but like, what else could you do? Or if you do want to do it for your child, then why haven't you started now? Or what are different ways that you can communicate that with your child or your friend or whoever to reach a goal? Yeah, so I think just sitting down, talking with them, building that trust and relationship. I think we've all probably heard this, but who they surround themselves with, that is huge. And even in my life and probably in your life too, like you are who you surround yourself with. And if, a friend or a wife or a husband isn't on the same page with you or doesn't support what you're doing, I think that's one of the biggest things, because it's kind of like, okay, well then if they're doing it, I might as well too. And that's why I believe like when I meet someone like that, like their why kind of isn't deep enough to me. Because if it's deep and you want it really bad, then you're going to have blinders on and you're going after it, So then, we'll probably talk there a little bit. But number two, which I haven't really thought about that until, or thought about this number two option until I kind of got deeper into coaching and training. But it's kind of like it's honestly fear, I think. When you talk about cycles and like goals and setting the Monday goal, that's kind of what they want. Like they kind of they approach a coach or a trainer and they believe that that is like the key to unlock everything. But, again, we can't do it for them. And that's what stinks sometimes. So I think those two things, not having the proper support system, but also number two, kind of going in with a incorrect mindset that we're the answer, because we're kind of just the guides, like you're going to do all the work to a sense, but we can't be the one to create motivation inside of you, or even to text you, every hour on the hour saying, hey, how are you doing? Hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really, as a trainer, you're really the Sherpa, the person that leads you up the mountain, but that person has to climb and they have to be willing to make that climb. And
Right.
you're not gonna pull them along, and you can't, because when things get hard, they have to be able to fight and be able to climb on their own. And when it comes to, kind of a little bit further on in that process, you have people who set the goal, they surround themselves with good people, and they have a good plan, a good trainer, all these things, they're working hard. What do you do though? Because there's always that point where it's like they hit that life problem. Their significant other leaves, or they get fired from work, or somebody in their family dies. Like these things,
Life.
life happens. Like how do you kind of try to help prepare somebody for, and even to a lesser degree of like, hey, I've been working really hard and I saw those initial gains or pounds lost, like how, and now that those stop, like how do you get somebody ready for just not great times, I guess?
Yeah, that's true. No, and it happens to all of us. I think what you said was good, that you have to prepare that person, because, any good nutrition or training program, it has to have any type of progression in there. So this is probably one of those cliche sayings, but what goes up must come down. I think that's kind of true just for like our bodies in general, but also, our training programs and our nutrition plans. And we can, drive it hard to the ground, lose a pound, like 1 or 2 pounds week by week, but you are going to plateau. But like we also want a plateau. So I think preparing them to say, like, listen, when life happens, or like your goals are going to shift. So I think knowing that, well, I guess telling them that, listen, your goals probably have to shift throughout, the months goes by. But yeah, I think preparing them that, life isn't perfect and your goals or gains isn't going to be perfect as well. So that also kind of goes with the mentality of overcoming as well, because you want to adapt when you're on a plan, but also when there's an obstacle, we do have to overcome. And, sometimes we have to have a detour in our life and our plans, as well as nutrition and training plans. So I think, yeah, just like you said, just preparing them. And to do that, it's just communication. It's all communication, and never setting them up to say, okay, this will happen, but more saying, listen, like it might happen, but just know that I'm going to be here for you. And here are some steps that we can take. Because, of course, everyone's steps is going to be different, just the way they process failure, the way they process goal hitting, or even process goal setting in general.
What kind of impact, do you hope to have on this industry? We've talked about how social media can be good, but it can also be bad, with maybe coaches who don't have the right intentions or the best information. A lot of maybe products that aren't the best. So there's some goods to it, but there's also some bads to it. So how do you, what do you really want to kind of, how do you want to, I guess, leave your mark on this industry?
Right. I think what first comes to mind is the reason why I got into, I guess, coaching and fitness. And it's honestly because I had awesome male coaches in my life, when I was, gosh, I remember in first grade, I had an awesome PE teacher. And from then on up, um, I had all males. I think I had one female in my little bunch up until, college. Um, and they impacted me, but they just impacted me because they never told me that I couldn't do it. And they always told me that I could do more. And I think because of that's because that was what was taught to me, I want to reflect that to those that I'm around. Um, and even being at this age, I've heard so many just bad and unfortunate stories about how women in fitness, they haven't had great mentors growing up. And even like my close friends and families, when they were playing college ball, like whether it was basketball or softball or whatever, they didn't have the best like support system, but also coaches who didn't know what they were doing, just like you were saying. And so for me, like for me to have my story, that I had amazing coaches that, they didn't know everything, and they'll happily admit that. But the fact that they had a huge part in what I'm doing right now, I think that just speaks volumes.
I think a good coach is just somebody who is trying to connect with a person and be bring out the best version of that person. Because like you said, you can't do it for them, but you can help them, you can help shed the light on what they are capable of doing.
Right. Definitely. And there's times where, I've had mentors who, when I was just starting out, I just was craving just like a new training program or a new nutrition plan, just so I could test out and just utilize for my future or someone else's future. And I mean, it sounds so funny, but like whenever I'm meal prepping or whenever I'm, like going all my 5 sets to failure, I think about that person. I'm like, okay, like, yes, I'm doing it for myself, but I'm kind of doing it for them too, because I brought it upon myself. And that's what kind of keeps you motivated, is other people sometimes, whether it's an external motivator or internal.
Yeah. No, I kind of find myself doing the same thing. Just kind of being like an experiment for just what works, in general, because like I said, everybody's going to have a little bit of what works differently, but um it's I think that's kind of a cool part about fitness too, is like you get to experiment.
Thanks for giving myself, but also everyone else, a platform to do so. I just appreciate you, and can't wait for the future. Definitely.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. So if people want to reach out to you, where can they do that?
Yeah, definitely. Probably just Instagram might be the easiest and quickest way. That's just my first and last name, all lowercase, no space, Emily Orender.